Hi, I'm Jenny Luera, and today I'm going to be talking to you about diction, choosing the correct word. Now there are two different definitions of the word diction. The first definition is style of speaking or writing as dependent upon choice of words. Now the second definition of diction is the accent, inflection, intonation, and speech sound quality manifested by an individual speaker. Now when I read that definition, the first thing I think about is the musical, My Fair Lady. Now the musical My Fair Lady is based on a book called Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. Now in this musical, a flower salesman has a lot of trouble with her diction. She has trouble with her intonation, with the quality of her speech. She's very difficult to understand. So she goes to a professor to help her to learn how to speak correctly so that way she can become a proper lady in society. So that's kind of what the second definition is talking about, the quality of your speech. We're going to be focusing on the first definition of diction, which, let's read it again, it's the style of speaking or writing as dependent upon choice of words. So that's mainly the little part that we're going to be focusing on, the word choice today. Now, when I was in school, when I was in elementary school and high school, I loved English class, specifically grammar class. I loved talking about sentence structure and diagramming nouns and verbs, and I especially loved diction and word usage, word choice. I looked forward to those days in school. Now my husband, not so much. Not a big fan of grammar and not a big fan of diction. If you're more on the side of my husband, not a big fan, then this part is for you, talking about why this is important to study, why it's important to use. Now the first reason that diction is very important is for clear communication. Choosing the correct word and using words correctly really aids you in communicating clearly. If you misuse a word, it can change the entire meaning of a sentence very, very quickly and very easily. Now, there are times that if you misuse a word, if you use incorrect diction when you're communicating, either in writing or in speaking, people might just kind of chuckle, but they still would maybe understand what you're talking about from the context of your sentence. That's why the second reason is also very important, and that is authority. When you are writing and you use words incorrectly, it automatically brings down your authority on that topic, and you look as though maybe you don't know what you're talking about. Now, if I was up here today speaking about how to fix a car engine, you would find out very quickly that I am not an authority on car engines. I wouldn't be using the words correctly, I probably wouldn't be pronouncing them correctly, and I wouldn't really know what I was talking about. Now, you do not want that when you're writing or when you're speaking. A lot of the writing that we do is for classes and for professors, and the last thing you want them to think is that you're not sure what you're talking about. So using correct diction and using words correctly is very important. Now, the last reason is appropriateness. Diction errors may creep into casual text conversations with friends or emails home, but there is no reason that diction errors should show up in our papers for school, emails to professors, even on our class discussion boards. It's just inappropriate to make those errors, especially when they're so easily fixable and so easy for us to catch as we're writing. So that's three reasons why diction is really important. It aids in clear communication, it helps us to project authority in our writing, and it also is appropriate at the level that we're writing in college. Now, Mark Twain was once quoted saying that the difference between the right word and almost the right word is the same as the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. Now, there is a big difference between a strike of lightning and a lightning bug, and Mark Twain felt like the difference between those two things is the same as using almost the right word and using the correct word. So we're going to look at three diction errors that kind of represent whole categories of errors that people make in their diction. Now the first one, anxious versus eager. These are words that don't look the same, they don't sound the same, but people often use them interchangeably. That's because there's kind of the connotation that anxious and eager mean the same thing, and they don't. To be anxious would be to be uneasy or to be worried about a situation, where eager is excited and looking forward to something. You don't want to use those as the same word. So for example, if I use them both in a sentence, I could say, I'm anxious about my grade in the class, but I'm eager for the class to end. Now obviously not talking about this class, but that would mean that I'm anxious or I'm uneasy about the grade that I'm going to be receiving in the class, but I'm excited for the class to end. So that would be a way to use it correctly in a sentence. So that kind of represents that first category of words that just people have kind of melded the definitions together in their mind. Now the second category is principal and principal, or just principal. These words are homophones and they sound exactly the same, and that's why they're commonly misused, because instead of really thinking through the correct spelling for the one people want to use, they just use whichever one seems right at the time. Now, principal and principal are words that have been used all the way through elementary school as diction errors that teachers have tried to get their students to correct. Now, when I learned these in elementary school, my teacher told me that how to be able to know which one to use is principal, talking about the person that is in charge of a school, has the word pal at the end because the principal is your friend. So that's how I learned it in school. And obviously the other principal, the one with the P-L-E at the end, is like a moral or a rule that you live your life by. So that's another level, or another section of diction errors are the homophones. Now the last one, moral versus morale. These ones are also very common. These are words that sound similar and look similar, but have completely different definitions. For moral and morale, a moral is a principle or a rule that you live your life by. As a Christian, I try to live my life by the morals of the Bible. That would be a correct way to use that word, moral. Now the other word, morale, more talks about the emotional kind of climate, whether it is of a person or of a group. So if you're talking about having a good morale, that would maybe mean triumphing through a difficult time and the group is doing well, you would say that they have a good morale. When I was in school, I got to play kind of like a video game. When we were done with our school, it was called Oregon Trail. And you got people on your wagon train and tried to get them all the way from point A to point B, keeping everybody alive and not losing any supplies. I loved it. It was so much fun. And every so often in the game, they would give you a little update on how your wagon morale was, if the people were doing well, if they were upset. And so that's that word, morale. And the way that I remember it is because it refers to people's emotional states. Emotional starts with an E and morale ends with an E. So that's how I remember that. So that's 3 different common diction errors. Now, there's a lot of ways to be able to fix diction errors. Instead of just guessing and hoping you got the right one, go ahead and look it up in a dictionary or use your phone or use the computer so that way you're sure that you're not misusing a word. Remember, Mark Twain said the difference between almost the right word and the right word is the same as the difference between a strike of lightning and a lightning bug. You don't want to put a lightning bug in your sentence where you intend for a lightning strike to be. So what we're going to do to practice these diction errors and make sure we're getting them right is we're going to write a sentence for each one of the words that we talked about today. So that would be 6 sentences in all. Does anyone have any questions before I get started? All right, if not, go ahead and get out a sheet of paper, number it 1 through 6, and get started on your sentences. Thank you.